What if I told you that the deepest pain you'll ever carry doesn't come from a stranger, not from a boss, not from an ex, but from someone who once sat beside you at the dinner table, someone who shared your childhood, your secrets, your laughter, and maybe even your tears. It's one thing to be hurt by the outside world, but it's another thing entirely when the betrayal comes from your own blood. We grow up fed a comforting belief that family, especially our siblings, are our lifelong allies, that no matter what happens out there, we'll always have a safe place to land at home. Blood is thicker than water, they say. But what happens when it's your own blood who poisons the well? What happens when the person you trusted most uses that trust against you? The truth is hard to admit, even to ourselves, that not all wounds bleed on the surface. Some stay silent, invisible, buried deep under layers of denial, shame, and guilt, especially when they're inflicted by someone who was supposed to protect you, not manipulate, compete with, or diminish you. And here's where Stoic philosophy steps in, not with vengeance, not with rage, but with clarity. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, said it best: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You see, life is not about eliminating pain. It's about learning to master our responses. And when it comes to family betrayal, especially from siblings, the most powerful response isn't always forgiveness. Sometimes it's distance. Sometimes the highest act of love is to love yourself enough to walk away. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't about bitterness. This is about boundaries. This video is going to shine a light on 7 types of betrayal from siblings that you should never tolerate. Not because you're heartless, not because you're angry, but because you finally made the decision to protect your peace, your dignity, and your self-respect. Because here's the truth. When betrayal comes from someone you once shared a childhood with, it cuts deeper than any insult from the outside world. It shakes the very foundation of what we believed family was supposed to be. But Stoicism teaches us not to be victims of our circumstances, no matter how unjust. It teaches us to reclaim our power through reason, restraint, and truth. You don't have to pretend anymore that everything is fine. You don't have to carry the burden of loyalty alone. You don't have to keep swallowing pain just because society tells you that family is everything. No, your mental health is everything. Your peace of mind is everything. And no title, whether it's brother, sister, cousin, or parent, gives anyone the right to repeatedly hurt you without consequence. So in the next few minutes, I invite you to take a breath. Be honest with yourself. Let go of the guilt and open your eyes to the reality of your relationships. Ask yourself, have I mistaken loyalty for self-abandonment? Have I confused silence with strength? Because here's what the Stoics knew, and what you're about to reclaim. True strength isn't in enduring pain silently. It's in drawing the line. Each of the 7 betrayals we'll cover might feel familiar. Maybe you've brushed them off for years. Maybe you've told yourself, that's just how they are. But deep down, you know, something isn't right. You're not alone in feeling that way, and you're not wrong for wanting better. If you've ever felt emotionally dismissed, consistently undermined, publicly humiliated, or trapped in a family role that slowly crushed your spirit, this message is for you. This is not just a video. This is a wake-up call. You deserve a family that builds you up, not one that tears you down in whispers and sarcasm. You deserve relationships that nourish your growth, not ones that resent it. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because in this space, we don't glorify suffering. We honor strength, we learn, we grow, and we choose peace, even if it means walking away from people we once thought would walk with us forever. Let's begin this journey together, not into bitterness, but into boundaries, not into revenge, but into resilience. Because sometimes, choosing yourself isn't betrayal. It's the bravest act of all. Part 1. Undermining you behind closed doors. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with a bang. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides behind smiles, nods, and polite conversations. And perhaps the most painful kind of betrayal is the one that happens quietly, behind closed doors, by someone you trusted the most. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt confused by the distance growing between you and someone you love? Even though you've done nothing wrong, you try to be kind, you try to be present, you give your best, and yet something in the air feels off. That's the power of subtle sabotage. It doesn't punch you in the face. It slowly erodes your image, your relationships, and your sense of self from the inside out. One of the most heartbreaking examples I've seen is Sarah's story. Sarah was the kind of daughter every parent hopes for: generous, hardworking, supportive. She helped her family financially, made sacrifices, and stayed emotionally available through all the chaos. But no matter how much she gave, her relationship with her mother felt strained. There was tension, mistrust, silence. For years, Sarah blamed herself. Maybe she wasn't doing enough. Maybe she was too emotional. Maybe she was imagining things. But the truth came out in a way she never expected. Her older sister, someone she had confided in, laughed with, cried with, had been painting her in a negative light all along. Behind her back, casually, even sweetly, her sister had been planting seeds of doubt in their mother's mind. Sarah's doing this just to get attention. She's always playing the victim. She wants to outshine everyone else. And just like that, Sarah's image, one she had built with love and effort, was quietly rewritten in the minds of those she cared about. Now, pause with me here, because maybe you've been there too. Maybe someone you loved and trusted smiled to your face, nodded at your dreams, told you they had your back, but then turned around and twisted your story, turned your effort into ego, your kindness into manipulation. That's not just hurtful, that's destructive. This form of betrayal doesn't just damage your relationships, it damages your identity. You begin to question yourself. You lose your footing. And you wonder, if my own family sees me this way, who am I really? But here's where Stoicism gives us back our strength. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, what we choose to believe and internalize, that's what we become. So here's what Sarah did. Instead of descending into bitterness, she chose clarity. She confronted the truth, not with anger, but with calm resolve. She voiced the hurt. She set boundaries. And most importantly, she stopped blaming herself for someone else's insecurities. That's what it means to live with dignity. You see, Stoicism isn't about suppressing pain. It's about facing reality with strength. It reminds us that we cannot control what others say about us, but we can control whether we let their stories define us. Sarah's breakthrough wasn't that she got her sister to change. Her breakthrough was that she reclaimed her own narrative. She realized, just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they share your values. That's a tough pill to swallow. We want family to mean safety. We want love to mean loyalty. But sometimes, what we need more than anything is the courage to protect our peace, even if that means walking away from the people we once thought would never hurt us. So here's my message to you. If you've ever experienced this kind of silent betrayal, you are not wrong for noticing the shift in energy. You are not overreacting to the way someone speaks about you when you're not in the room. And you are not selfish for setting boundaries with someone who repeatedly undermines you, no matter what title they hold. Trust is not a birthright, it's earned. And just because someone is family doesn't mean they're entitled to your silence in the face of disrespect. You are allowed to speak up. You are allowed to protect your name. You are allowed to let go of those who smile in your face but poison your reputation when you turn your back. So I'll leave you with this. If someone in your life is quietly tearing you down while pretending to build you up, it's time to stop justifying their behavior and start justifying your peace. You don't have to carry that pain in silence anymore. You deserve honesty. You deserve dignity. And most of all, you deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate you in public and in private. Because that's what real love looks like. Part 2. Sabotaging your success. Success should be something that brings people together, especially family. It should be celebrated, encouraged, and shared with pride. But what do you do when your achievements don't inspire support? They trigger resentment? What happens when your success becomes a mirror reflecting someone else's insecurity? You see, betrayal doesn't always show up as direct confrontation. Sometimes it hides behind a smirk, a joke, a sarcastic comment at the dinner table that leaves you questioning yourself. Have you ever heard something like this? Well, you just got lucky. Must be nice to have everything handed to you. You've changed. You're not who you used to be. It sounds harmless at first, but deep down you feel it. Something's off. That wasn't encouragement. That was envy dressed as humor. Let me tell you about Michael. Michael had spent years quietly working on his dream of becoming a writer. While others were out partying or sleeping in, he stayed up late, pouring his heart into the pages of his first novel. It was his passion, his calling, and finally, after years of self-doubt and hard work, he did it. His book got published. His name was in print. His story was out in the world. His family gathered to celebrate, and most of them were proud. But his brother, Eric, was different. On the surface, he offered a quick, "Congrats," but underneath, his words were sharp. "It's just beginner's luck," he said later to mutual friends. "Let's see how long it lasts." Michael was stunned, not just by the words, but by who said them. This wasn't a random critic. This was his brother. Someone who should have been his loudest cheerleader. And that's what makes this kind of betrayal so painful. It's not about the comment, it's about the person making the comment. You see, success can reveal more than your growth. It often exposes the emotional gaps in others, especially those who haven't done the inner work to heal or grow themselves. Your light might shine so brightly that it unintentionally reminds someone else of how dim they feel inside. This is where Stoicism gives us the clarity to rise above. Epictetus, the great Stoic teacher, reminds us, we cannot control the actions of others, only our own thoughts, choices, and behavior. That means Michael didn't need to fix his brother. He didn't need to shrink to make others comfortable. What he needed was perspective and the strength to protect his peace. So instead of getting defensive or bitter, Michael made a Stoic choice. He didn't internalize the comment, he didn't argue. He saw Eric's reaction for what it was, not a reflection of Michael's value, but of Eric's internal struggle. Because here's a truth that every achiever needs to remember. Your success is not a threat. It's a reflection of your effort, your growth, and your resilience. If someone close to you can't handle that, if they mock it, dismiss it, or compete with it, they're showing you where their emotional work still needs to be done. And you? You don't have to dim your light to make others feel more comfortable in their shadows. Ask yourself this. Have you ever played small just to avoid making someone else uncomfortable? Have you ever apologized for your wins or made your achievements sound less impressive just so you wouldn't be too much for someone in your family? If so, it's time to stop. You were not born to play a smaller version of yourself just to preserve someone else's ego. True support is not silent resentment. It's loud, open-hearted celebration. And if your growth makes someone else feel threatened, that's a sign of their wounds, not your wrongdoings. Stoicism teaches us to stay rooted in what we can control, our discipline, our values, our integrity. If you've worked hard for something, own it. If you've grown, evolved, and stepped into your potential, don't shrink back. Michael didn't let his brother's comment derail him. He kept writing. He built a career, and he did it without needing Eric's approval. That's Stoic strength in action. So if you've ever faced this kind of betrayal, subtle, quiet sabotage from someone who should be in your corner, I want you to remember this. You don't need to fight for validation. You don't need to prove your worth to people who refuse to see it, and you absolutely do not need to apologize for evolving. The people meant to be in your life will rise with you, not pull you back down. The ones who cheer you on even when they're struggling, that's real love. Everyone else, that's noise. So keep growing, keep shining, keep building, not out of spite, not to prove anything, but because your path is yours. And no one, not even a sibling, has the right to stand in the way of it. Part 3. Using shared history as leverage. Some betrayals don't come with yelling. They don't arrive in conflict or confrontation. They come dressed in nostalgia, in laughter, in memories, in remember when you, followed by something you wish everyone would forget. Have you ever had someone pull out your past, not to celebrate it, but to shame you, to guilt you, to make you feel like no matter how far you've come, you're still that broken version of yourself? That's not memory. That's manipulation. And sadly, it often comes from the people who know us best. Our siblings, the ones who shared our childhood, who walked beside us during our most vulnerable moments. And precisely because they were there, they know exactly which wounds to press when they want to control us. Let's be honest. Growing up, we all made mistakes. We had bad haircuts, bad choices, emotional breakdowns, impulsive reactions. That's what growth looks like. It's messy. But when someone takes those raw moments and uses them against you, it's not love. It's leverage. Maybe it's your brother reminding you how irresponsible you used to be every time you try to take on a leadership role in the family. Or maybe it's your sister who keeps joking about the time you failed, cried, or collapsed. As if your past defines your future. They say it with a smile, a wink, just teasing. But the intent is clear, to pull you backward, to keep you small, to remind you of a version of yourself you've long outgrown. This tactic works because it hits at the core of our identity. We all want to be seen for who we are now, not who we once were. But when someone repeatedly drags your past into your present, they're refusing to acknowledge your growth. They're weaponizing vulnerability, and that is emotional blackmail. Now here's the Stoic truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste the rest of your life worrying about what others think of you, especially when those thoughts are rooted in who you used to be." The Stoics teach us that we are not our past, we are our current thoughts, our current choices, our current values. So if someone, especially a sibling, is chaining you to your history, it's your job to break those chains. Not with anger, but with boundaries. Because here's the deeper truth. People who constantly bring up your past often haven't done the work to move forward in their own lives. Your growth threatens their comfort. Your evolution forces them to face the fact that they've stayed stuck. So instead of growing, they try to shrink you back into a box they can control. And you don't belong in that box anymore. Let me share a story with you. A woman I know, we'll call her Rachel, had always been the troubled one in the family. In her 20s, she struggled with anxiety, made impulsive choices, and leaned on her siblings during rough seasons. But in her 30s, she transformed. Therapy, discipline, deep inner work. She became grounded, successful, emotionally balanced. And yet every time she came home, her brother would crack jokes about crazy Rachel or remind everyone about her meltdowns. It was subtle, dismissive, and devastating. One day, she finally looked him in the eye and said, "That version of me no longer exists. And if you need to keep bringing her up to feel better about yourself, I think that says more about you than it does about me." That moment changed everything. You see, reclaiming your narrative isn't about getting others to approve. It's about choosing to no longer participate in their power games. Stoicism reminds us, you can't control what others say, but you can absolutely control what you tolerate. So if someone keeps replaying your past like a highlight reel of failure, interrupt the pattern calmly, firmly. Let them know I've grown, and I will not be defined by anything less than who I am today. You owe no one an explanation for your healing. You owe no one permission to shame you for your former self. And you certainly owe no one the right to use your history as a leash. Let them laugh if they want. Let them cling to the past if they must, but you're walking forward, eyes open, shoulders back, soul aligned with growth. Because emotional blackmail only works on those who agree to stay silent. And you, my friend, are done staying silent. So here's the lesson. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not own you. If someone tries to reduce your progress to a punchline, Respond with presence, with peace, and with unshakable self-respect. And if they don't stop, walk, not out of anger, but out of love for the person you fought to become. Because no matter how deep the history runs, no one, not even a sibling, has the right to weaponize your past against your future. Part 4. Publicly humiliating you. Some wounds don't leave bruises, they leave echoes, echoes of laughter that weren't shared, of jokes that felt more like jabs of family gatherings where the room roared while your soul sank. Have you ever sat in a room full of people smiling, while someone you love turns your private pain into public entertainment? That's not teasing. That's betrayal. And it hurts even more when it comes from someone who knows exactly how deep the cut will go. Maybe it's your sibling bringing up something you told them in confidence, your anxiety, your financial troubles, a past mistake, dressed up as a funny story for the group. Everyone laughs, you force a smile, but inside, you're crushed. That kind of betrayal stings not just because of what was said, but because of who said it and in front of whom. Let me take you into a real moment. There was a woman, I'll call her Jenna. She had been going through a painful divorce, something she had shared only with her older sister during late-night phone calls, tears and all. She trusted her, thought she was safe. But at a family reunion in front of cousins, uncles, and even new acquaintances, her sister laughed and said, "Oh, you know Jenna, she's always falling apart over men. She probably cried for 3 days straight when her husband left." The room exploded with laughter. Jenna froze. They didn't know it, but they had just laughed at the most vulnerable chapter of her life. When she confronted her sister later, the response was typical. "You're too sensitive. It was just a joke." But here's the thing. It wasn't a joke. It was cruelty wrapped in humor. It was humiliation delivered with a smile. And it was betrayal, served cold, under the spotlight of other people's approval. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic thinkers, said, "It's not events themselves that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." That wisdom gives us power, not to excuse the betrayal, but to decide how we let it define us. Jenna could have spiraled into shame, but instead she made a choice. She stopped laughing along just to keep the peace. She set clear boundaries. She told her sister, "You don't get to treat me like a punchline and still expect closeness." Because here's the deeper truth. Public humiliation is not love. And being related to someone doesn't give them the right to trample your dignity. Let's talk plainly. You deserve to feel safe in your own story. You deserve relationships where your pain isn't recycled into entertainment. You deserve family, members who protect your vulnerability, not exploit it for laughs. And if you're constantly finding yourself the subject of jokes that leave you feeling small, embarrassed, or exposed, you're not the problem. The problem is someone else's inability to respect emotional boundaries. You might be wondering, am I overreacting? Is it just family humor? No. Here's how you can tell the difference. Real humor lifts everyone. It doesn't target one person. Real love notices when you're uncomfortable and stops. Real respect never disguises cruelty as comedy. So what can you do when a sibling crosses that line? You respond with clarity. You draw the boundary. And you do it without apology. Stoicism doesn't teach us to suppress pain. It teaches us to respond to it with discipline, logic, and self-respect. If someone makes you the butt of the joke repeatedly, they're telling you how little they value your emotional safety. Don't ignore that, and remember, setting boundaries isn't revenge, it's self-protection. You don't need to yell, you don't need to make a scene. You simply say, "That's not okay with me. I won't allow that kind of treatment again." If they call you sensitive, let them. If they dismiss your discomfort, let them. What matters is that you respect yourself enough to say no more. Because here's the truth. You are not here to be anyone's punchline. You are not obligated to tolerate disrespect because it comes wrapped in laughter. And you are absolutely allowed to demand that even your family speaks about you with honor. The Stoics believed that inner peace comes not from pleasing others, but from living in accordance with your values. And one of those values must be dignity. So if someone repeatedly humiliates you in public, no matter who they are, take a moment and ask yourself, is this love or is this performance? Is this connection or control? And most importantly, am I protecting my peace or trading it for temporary acceptance? You don't have to play along anymore. The people who truly love you will laugh with you, never at you. And the people who don't understand that? It's okay to let them go, or at least step back, because respect isn't optional, and dignity isn't negotiable, even in families. Part 5. Emotional absence. Not all betrayals come with harsh words. Some come in silence. It's the silence you hear when you're going through something devastating, and the people you thought would show up don't. No calls, no texts, no, "Are you okay?" Just emptiness. And that silence? It speaks volumes. We often talk about betrayal as something loud, arguments, gossip, backstabbing. But sometimes the deepest wounds are caused by those who simply vanish when you need them the most. Especially when that person is a sibling, someone you grew up believing would always be there. Let me ask you this. Have you ever gone through a hard time, a breakup, a loss, a moment of darkness, and realized that the person you expected to stand by you was nowhere to be found? That's not just disappointment, that's emotional abandonment. There's a story I want to share. A man, let's call him Daniel, lost his best friend in a sudden accident. It shook him. For weeks, he struggled to get out of bed, to eat, to breathe. And during that time, friends from college, co-workers, even distant acquaintances reached out to offer their support. But his brother, his own brother, said nothing. Not a message, not a call, not even a single word of condolence. Months later, when Daniel finally asked him why, the reply was cold. "I figured you'd get over it. Everyone deals with stuff." That moment stung deeper than the grief itself. Why? Because emotional absence doesn't just hurt in the moment, it challenges everything we believed about connection, about family, about being seen. You grow up thinking, we may fight, we may disagree, but when things go wrong, we show up for each other. And then one day you're in the darkest valley of your life, and the person you expected to walk beside you chooses to disappear. Now here's where Stoic philosophy offers a life-changing shift in perspective. Seneca, the great Roman Stoic, wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Meaning, our emotional pain often expands when we ruminate, when we keep asking, why didn't they care? Why didn't they come? But Stoicism teaches us to focus not on their absence, but on our resilience. Because here's the hard truth. Some people, even those closest to us, simply lack the emotional depth, the self-awareness, or the courage to hold space for our pain. Not because we're unworthy of love, but because they haven't learned how to give it. That doesn't make the silence any easier, but it does help us stop internalizing it. Daniel realized that his brother's distance wasn't about him. It was about emotional immaturity, discomfort, fear of vulnerability. So he made a choice. Instead of begging for connection, he started investing in people who showed up, friends who sent voice notes, neighbors who brought food, old mentors who just listened. And in doing so, he found something far more healing than shallow family loyalty. He found genuine, soul-level connection. If you've ever experienced this kind of silence, you probably asked yourself, did I matter that little? Let me answer that for you. No. You mattered more than they were capable of handling. And that's on them, not you. So how do you move forward when a sibling or any loved one shows up with silence instead of support? You grieve it. You feel it fully. But then, you choose to stop chasing care from those who are emotionally unavailable. You shift your energy to those who do show up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard, awkward, or uncomfortable. Because real love doesn't run from pain. It sits in it with you, quietly, patiently, without fixing, just being. That's the kind of connection worth building. Stoicism doesn't tell us to be cold, it tells us to be wise, to recognize what we can control and what we can't. You can't force someone to care, but you can decide who gets your emotional investment moving forward. And here's what's powerful. Once you stop seeking love from the emotionally absent, you begin creating space for deeper, more authentic relationships to enter your life. So, if you've been carrying the pain of someone's silence, here's your reminder. You don't need to chase someone's attention to prove your worth. You don't need to keep breaking your heart trying to teach someone how to be present. And you definitely don't need to keep opening your door to someone who only shows up when it's easy. Emotional presence is a choice. And absence, especially in your hardest moments, is also a choice. Let that truth guide how you love and who you keep close. Because in the end, family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands beside you when the world goes dark. Part 6. Forcing you into family roles. What if the real reason you're exhausted isn't your job, your to-do list, or even your past, but a silent role you've been carrying in your family for years, that you never agreed to? Let's talk about something most people don't realize until it's already breaking them down. Family roles. Not the fun kind. Not favorite uncle or cool cousin. I'm talking about the roles you didn't choose but were silently assigned, like the fixer, the peacemaker, the emotional sponge, or the one who always sacrifices so no one else has to. Sound familiar? Maybe you're the one everyone turns to when there's a fight but no one asks how you feel. Maybe you're expected to drop everything when a sibling calls, but the favor is never returned. Or maybe you've been carrying the emotional weight of an entire family while no one even notices your knees are shaking. This isn't love. This isn't loyalty. This is emotional servitude dressed up as family duty. Let me tell you about Emma. Since childhood, Emma was the glue in her family, the mediator, the one who calmed everyone down during conflict, who made peace at holiday dinners, who absorbed the emotional chaos of those around her. But as the years passed, she noticed something. No one ever checked on her. Her exhaustion was invisible. Her boundaries ignored. And when she finally said, "I can't do this anymore," her siblings didn't thank her for years of selfless effort. They called her selfish. That moment broke something in Emma, but it also woke her up. Because here's the truth. A role you never chose is not your responsibility to keep. Yet so many of us, especially the emotionally intelligent ones, the empathetic ones, get trapped in these unspoken contracts. And the most dangerous part? They don't feel like cages until we try to step out of them. But here's where Stoicism offers powerful clarity. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, define yourself, not by your family's expectations, but by your values, your vision, your truth, because you were not born to manage other people's emotions. You are not obligated to be the strong one forever, and you don't owe anyone your peace just because they've grown comfortable watching you sacrifice it. Now let's go deeper. Family roles often emerge from dysfunction. When someone refuses to heal, the burden falls on someone else to hold things together. That someone else often becomes you. But what happens when you start healing? When you start setting boundaries? They call it betrayal. They say, "You've changed." They guilt you with "after everything we've done for you." But the real betrayal isn't you walking away from the role. It's them expecting you to stay small so they don't have to grow. Emma realized this. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She simply started saying no. And at first, the pushback was real. But over time, her boundaries became clear, and her peace returned. So here's what I want to tell you. You have every right to redefine your place in the family. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but out of love for the person you are becoming and the life you want to live. Stoicism teaches us that the only obligations we must keep are the ones we choose freely. Anything done out of guilt, fear, or expectation isn't service, it's self-erasure. You don't need to justify stepping away from a role that's killing your spirit. You don't need permission to stop being the one who holds everything together while falling apart on the inside. You get to choose who you are now. So if you're listening to this and feeling that deep exhaustion, the kind that comes not from doing too much but from being too much for too many people, it's time to ask, who assigned me this role? What happens if I let it go? And most importantly, who could I become if I stopped carrying what was never mine to hold? The answer might scare you, but it will also set you free. So let me say this clearly. You are not selfish for choosing peace over performance. You are not weak for saying, I can't keep doing this. You are not ungrateful for asking others to take responsibility for their own lives. You are wise, you are growing, and you are finally remembering that love should lift you, not limit you. Part 7. Competing for parental favor. It's one of the most silent, toxic dynamics in many families. Not spoken out loud, not always obvious, but it's there, in the glances, the praise, the timing of compliments and criticisms, the invisible competition for parental favor. It's a betrayal that doesn't come with a knife, it comes with a smile and a performance. And it's not always rooted in cruelty. Sometimes, it's rooted in insecurity, in emotional scarcity, in the desperate belief that love must be earned and there's only so much to go around. Let me ask you, have you ever felt like your sibling was always one step ahead, not by achievement, but by design? They knew when to talk about their successes, right after your failures. They made sure your flaws were mentioned, just before their strengths were praised. They mastered the art of looking like the better child, not by working harder, but by subtly shifting the narrative. That's not just competition. That's strategic manipulation. And it cuts deep because it turns something sacred, love, into a scoreboard. This happens in more families than we'd like to admit. And sometimes it's even romanticized. Take John F. Kennedy and his brother, Robert, for example. History remembers their unity, their brilliance, their collective rise. But behind the curtain, there was pressure, comparison, subtle rivalry, fueled by the expectations of a powerful family name and a father who made it clear success meant love, and love meant competition. So what's the cost of that dynamic? You stop being a son or daughter. You become a performer, a chess piece, someone who's always trying to prove, to outperform, to earn what should have been unconditional in the first place. And when your sibling joins in, feeding off your flaws to elevate themselves, it creates a deep, almost unspeakable hurt. Not because you lost a game, but because you lost trust in someone who should have had your back. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. Peace does not come from being chosen. It comes from being true. Marcus Aurelius said, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." In other words, if your sense of worth is constantly swinging on the opinions of others, especially your parents, you'll never feel steady. Never feel free. So what do you do when your sibling plays this game, when they highlight your shortcomings just to boost their standing? When they position themselves as the reliable one, the mature one, while subtly casting shadows over your efforts, you stop playing. Not because you're weak, but because you understand that genuine love is not a competition. And family, approval that must be manipulated, is not the kind of love that sustains a soul. Here's the truth no one says out loud. Your worth is not up for debate. It's not something to be compared, auctioned, or negotiated. It's defined by your integrity, your actions, your growth. And if someone feels the need to compete with you in order to feel seen, that's their own battle with inadequacy. Don't let it become yours. Let me give you this perspective. Many siblings who compete for attention aren't evil. They're afraid they won't be loved for who they are, so they create roles to impress. They perform, they polish, they compare. But your job isn't to fix that. Your job is to rise above it. So what does that look like? It means you stop over-explaining. You stop trying to prove your side of the story every time your sibling paints a version of you that isn't fair. You stop giving away your energy trying to win people who should have been on your side all along, and instead, you live. You live with integrity. You show up with consistency. You let your life, not your words, speak. Stoicism teaches us to detach from things we can't control, including how others perceive us, especially when that perception is shaped by someone else's insecurity. And the beauty of that? When you stop trying to be the favorite, you become free. Free to love your parents without needing their approval. Free to see your siblings' behavior without taking it personally. Free to focus on building a life that honors your values, not their comparisons. So if you felt caught in this quiet war for attention, if your sibling has made you feel small just to appear taller, this is your reminder. You were never in a race. There is no trophy. And real love, real connection, isn't won by being better. It's built through truth, respect, and authenticity. And you, my friend, are already enough. If you've made it this far, I want to say something directly to you. You've carried a lot. You've endured betrayals not from strangers, but from people you once trusted with your heart, your stories, your childhood. The kind of pain that doesn't always leave scars on the outside, but leaves confusion, shame, and silence on the inside. And I want you to know something important. You're not weak for feeling this pain. You're not dramatic. You're not overly sensitive. You are human. And when someone you love, especially a sibling, uses that love to wound, manipulate, or diminish you, that's not just painful. That's traumatic. Each of the betrayals we've talked about in this video, emotional absence, manipulation, public humiliation, competition, being forced into roles, having your past weaponized, these aren't normal family dynamics. They are violations of emotional safety. They chip away at your identity. They shape how you see yourself. And if left unexamined, they can follow you into every relationship you have, whispering the lie that you're hard to love. But here's what Stoic wisdom teaches us. What Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca all understood. You do not have to stay where your peace is consistently threatened. Let me repeat that for the part of you that's still unsure. You do not have to stay where your peace is consistently threatened. Stoicism doesn't ask us to be cold or disconnected. It asks us to live with clarity, to stop waiting for others to validate us and instead find strength in our own reasoning, values, and truth. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming anchored. Because here's what you must remember. You are not disloyal for saying, "I deserve more than this." You are not selfish for drawing a line, even if it separates you from people who once felt like home. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's self-respect. And yes, it's hard. We've been taught to cling to family, no matter the cost. But what's the cost of holding on too long? Your mental health, your confidence, your ability to trust, your peace. There comes a moment when you realize the love you were waiting for may never come in the form you hoped. And when that moment arrives, you have two choices. You can keep shrinking yourself to stay in spaces where you're merely tolerated. Or you can rise and walk away, not out of hate, not to hurt them, but because you finally understand your worth. You see, the Stoics never taught us to endure indefinitely. They taught us to endure what's necessary, to recognize what is within our control and what is not. You cannot control who supports you. You cannot control who betrays you, but you can control what you allow to continue. And that decision, that boundary, is the birthplace of inner freedom. So, here's my invitation to you. Take back your story. Stop waiting for apologies that may never come. Stop explaining your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. And stop giving access to people who only bring confusion and chaos. Instead, build a life where your peace is protected, where your presence is appreciated, not exploited, where your past is honored, not weaponized, where your growth is celebrated, not resented. And if that means walking away from a sibling, a parent, or anyone who refuses to treat you with respect, then walk, with grace, not guilt. Because love without respect is not love. And family without safety is not family. Let go of the fantasy. Let go of the obligation. Let go of the guilt. Hold on to your dignity, your values, your peace. Because that's what Stoicism calls us to do, not just to survive betrayal, but to transform through it. So if this message spoke to you, if you felt seen, understood, or simply less alone, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below and say yes. Yes to clarity. Yes to growth. Yes to choosing peace. You are not the role they cast you in. You are not the shadow of your sibling. You are not who you were in your worst moment. You are the architect of your future, the guardian of your peace, the author of your next chapter. And I hope you write it boldly. You deserve nothing less.